All right. So this is my good buddy Abhi. And Abhi is very unique in that he also knows how to span the white collar and the blue collar worlds. And so we were chatting back and forth on Facebook Messenger, and I was just like, this we should record what we're talking about. Like this needs to be out there. So 20 minutes later, here we are, totally impromptu. I've got a few notes scribbled down, um, but I wanted to talk about the confluence of those two worlds and
Mm,
how they don't play very well together, but they're
mm,
going to have to for
yeah.
decarbonization. There is no
Mhm,
choice. You see me talk about it all the time. Contractors are 80% politically conservative,
mm,
so you can't use liberal arguments. Like that's
mhm,
not how you get anywhere. It
yeah.
doesn't work that way, and you can't treat them like children, which is typically how programs have
Yeah.
treated contractors for years.
Mhm,
So I just wanted to kind of just hash out what we were talking about
mhm.
on Messenger. So, what are your thoughts, having been both white and blue collar?
Yeah. So it's again, like you said, Nate. A lot of this is going to flow off the top. So this is like freestyle rapping in that sense. This is not prepared statements. So if this gets one of us into trouble, it'll probably be worth it. But
Maybe both of us if we're lucky.
fingers crossed. But my view has been, I've spent a lot of time in the policy world, but I've also spent a lot of time in the blue collar world, both working and also culturally, and then my friends and family and where they come from, my roots and so on. And I think there's some salient observations that I have that we were talking about that I think has a bearing on how we move forward with HVAC 2.0. From a white collar world, this it's a broad term, and I get that this category is not it's not a silo necessarily, but it involves people who make or shape policy, either academics or people who write policy, or people who lobby, advocate, and things like that. And these people have a very typically tend to have a sort of a 10,000 feet view of where they want all these pieces to move. But my experience has been that oftentimes, when it comes to implementing some of these, actually, even before implementing the policy, the world that informs their policy is very different from the world in which HVAC installers and technicians and energy retrofit folks inhabit. And the way in which our societies are evolving too is that not only are these worlds um, epistemologically separate. So they're different. And how do we know what we know? How do we make judgments about what is the right thing to do? What is the best approach to do? The, Not only is the ways of knowing different, but even culturally, like we hang out and it's likely that these two worlds hang out in different. We probably even drink different beers. We probably eat at different restaurants. There's probably we listen to different kinds of music. And the ways in which these propagate in getting HVAC 2.0 to action is I think that these two worlds operate under different logics, speak different language, and the ways in which the knowledge and skills are upgraded is different. So when you look at it retrofitting, let's say, cities across Canada, I'll use that as an example, have very bold net zero goals by 2050. But their pathway to getting there is often a pathway that I think the blue collar world will see as either counterproductive or not good enough. So they'll begin with, let's do a demonstration project, and then let's, for a year or two, let's have small, very specific funding arrangements like that have trouble scaling. You're already laughing. You get it, right?
I'm chuckling like not that I'm a big Sarah Palin fan, but I remember the joke like, how's that hopey changey thing going for you? Um, like like the
Yeah,
when it comes to electrification in buildings, it's
yeah,
it's my show, so it's fucking gritty. Like you're going to get dirty, you're going to swear at each
Yeah,
other, you're going to get
yeah,
pissed, there's going to be all kinds of problems that come out of it, and then
yeah.
you're going to finish it. Hopefully you'll take great pride in it, and then you're going to move on and do it all over again.
Yeah.
So I mean, what we've been trying to do in 2.0 is how do we at least take most of those bumps out? We can't take them
Mm.
all out, but we can at
Yeah.
least put things in an order where it's less
Yeah.
likely to have big bumps. But yeah, that's one thing. It's like I hear these big goals, and it's like, yeah, but you still have a furnace and you still drive an ICE car. Like, come on. Like, you need to go through the process to see what it's like to understand how hard it is. And then you get into the thing that drives me nuts that you were just mentioning, which is, oh, we're going to do a case study. We're going to do a pilot. Like, we are
Pilots,
out of
big
time.
studies.
We're done.
Right.
Like, we either scale quickly right now or we
Yeah.
fail. There's
Right.
there's no other path.
Right.
So stop it with the hopey changey stuff.
So
Give
again,
me the
that
gritty.
goes back to what we were talking about in terms of knowledge and what constitutes as useful knowledge. In the policy world, the white collar world, as we call it, you know, case studies work because they demonstrate that this policy works. And so when people go to conferences, they can share, okay, you know, this city tried this and these are the results, and maybe if this is the kind of results that we want, this is what we want to do. But there's a lot of assumptions baked into how those case studies are built or generated. They assume shovel-ready projects. They assume that there are contractors that are skilled enough to, you know, to do these projects. And the question of how do you go from there to having, you know, a nation of millions, like, you know,
Yeah.
is that a Wu-Tang song? A nation of millions, right? A nation of million, a nation of million, or a city of a million retrofits. We don't have a model. There's no case study for that because no one has really done that yet. So the world in which the blue collar inhabits is that what constitutes knowledge for us is what we've learned through experience of doing 10, 15 years of installs. That may not fit neatly into a case study, cannot be packaged enough because those are not the things that we are tracking. The things that we track are different from things that the sort of a policy-driven case study approach tracks. And so I think one of the challenges then becomes, so what happens when those pilot projects go away? What happens when those seed funding goes away? What
Not a
happens
gosh
when
darn thing is usually the answer. And to be fair, like I'm all for case studies. I mean, we built some very, very strong case studies on our projects it was our 2014 to 2016 projects. So they're important for showing what's possible and kind of moving things. But if it's a case study for the sake of a case study, like you said, there's usually very unreasonable things. And so one of our case studies, it was a cool project, but it was just up the road from where I am now, and it was a house was donated to a college to be turned into the environmental studies building. And so we helped do all of that, but it had a budget 3x what any of our other projects has been. And in tracking the energy use of that, it's actually worse than most of our other electrifications because it was missing a few planning pieces. It was one mini split shy, basically. So it's not the sharpest knife in the drawer. We needed like one mini split short of a solution. Is that a new saying? But that isn't a reasonable proxy for what's going to happen in the real world. So like the automated case studies, I think will be good for contractors to help homeowners be comfortable and show that what they're doing is low risk. But at a programmatic level, I like stop it.
Right. And so here's the thing, right? Think about the last like 6 months to a year of your life. I would argue that you are the nation's most popular residential HVAC installer. True?
Which is hilarious because I am not a tech.
Right.
I'm not. I'm friends with a ton of them, and I love them dearly.
Yeah. So how did that happen?
Because I went out in the field and I know how to do hard shit.
Right. So you in a way you're like you're like the reverse Prometheus, right? You're taking You're taking fire from the people and bringing it up to the gods. Like in the Greek myth of Prometheus. Prometheus took God, got cast away because he took fire from the gods and brought it to the people. What you've done in a way over the past 6 months to a year is you've mainstreamed a lot of the wisdom from the streets.
Mm-hmm.
So the question then is, why hasn't anyone else been as successful in doing this as you have been? Now, that's a question to ponder, right? If we are to get to our bold climate targets, we need to understand your world. And so what are the ways in which we can, bring more of those perspectives, not as an after the fact saying, here's what we've all learned, but knowing what we know about how the blue collar world operates, here's how we can design policy.
Yeah.
Why have we not been successful in doing that, do you think? Till you showed up with your camper van.
Oddly enough. Well, not that part of me wants to ask you back, but I will give you the main thought, which is what we call the church at the kitchen table. Policy in general does not consider the incentives of the homeowner and the contractors first. Above all, nothing else matters. That is what must happen to see scale. There's going to be different ways to get there. We found one path, and it's freaking narrow, and there may be others, but I don't know what they are. And not saying that from a cocky perspective. It's like, seriously, I don't know that there's another pass over this. This may be the only way, and it's really narrow. So yeah, this all started when someone asked a not particularly well framed question in one of the groups, and then got annoyed when I came back snarky. And I came back harsher still, and so that's it. I don't always let the warrior side of me out, but I definitely have a warrior side. Most of the time, you're going to get nice guy Nate, but I will mix it up as needed. And that frustrated me because the project that was being discussed, I'm like, this is not a scalable project. Like, I seriously sold my last house in large part because of what was being suggested. It was completely residing a house and changing windows. That was going to be $100,000 at least on my old house. I sold it for 200. We can't scale that. Nobody's going to buy it. I wouldn't buy it. I've been called the father of electrify everything, and I'm like, screw this. I'm selling the house. The technology will come for that, but that house has a boiler, and there is no zero carbon boiler replacement yet. I have the closest thing in existence sitting 2 feet from me. It's a sand and water heater. That's the closest potential option. But yeah, if we aren't thinking scalability and how do we get to the early majority, so if you think of a bell curve, you have to get to that fat part of the bell curve or you're in trouble. Anyway, so you made a couple of comments that I thought were really fascinating. One of which was your boss basically telling you, because you just had a blue collar job for a while, to kind of clear your mind. And basically he said that he likes curious greenhorns more than someone with experience that's wrong. So you want to riff on that?
Yeah, so it's, in my job that I worked on, I really enjoyed. Part of it's like HVAC design in the sense that it's part art, it's part science, and it's part craftsmanship. So there's no narrow path for designing an HVAC system, just as there was no narrow path for doing what I used to do. And so oftentimes in this world, you'll end up with people who have had 5 to 10 years of experience in something that's relatively parallel, similar, not exactly the product that we are developing, something that's similar, that would come to our company looking for work. And my boss, through 20 years of experience, has learned, he told me, that oftentimes when you bring in people who had some amount of experience in doing things their own way, they end up getting stuck in the rut, and they are often blind, or they're often unaware of their own blind spots, because the combination of craftsmanship and science and art has kind of solidified in that way. So there's a certain way in which they do things, and when the product that you're developing is a little different than what you're used to, not many people have the confidence in their own abilities to take a step back and say, how would I do this? They would
Yeah.
just take the toolbox that, so
I
they
just
bring
do
the,
this. Yeah. Get out the hammer.
yeah. So they bring the both the literal and the mental toolbox that they've had over the past 5 years, and then try hammering away at this problem. Whereas someone like me at the previous job, I had no experience doing any of this sort. Is doesn't mind looking foolish because I'm already in ground zero. I'm like, oh, how do I do this, or how would I do this? And I would come at it. I would be more curious and inquisitive. And I've been a part of the HVAC 2.0 Facebook forums for like close to 4 years now, I think, since they were first started.
Yeah.
And because I'm not an HVAC technician, I haven't actively participated in a lot of those threads. But I have a lot of experience with, and I'm an electrical engineer, and I know my way around HVAC systems. So I get the techniques of it, even though I lack the craftsmanship of this specific purpose. But I have a lot of experience in like running what are called communities of practice, which is similar to what you guys have at the HVAC 2.0. And the thing about community of practice is that they're different from hobby groups, and they're different from like industrial groups and conferences, right? So in an industrial conference, you would go to a conference and some hotshot somewhere did something great, and they'll give you a presentation. You'll receive that wisdom, and you'll read these reports, and you go back and then you work on it yourself. Or you can go get trained and go to a course and get trained, and then you come back and you work on yourself. But as a community of practice, like the HVAC 2.0 Facebook forums, the key ingredient is that knowledge and learning happens socially. It's an informal group of peers who build a shared understanding of knowledge through routine social interactions. So I started a community of practice here in the town city I live in called Guelph in Canada. It's called GEMS, Guelph Energy Managers. And so these are building managers, property managers, and certified energy managers who manage energy for a suite of properties or building. And so the way we do it is that we meet once a month. And then, for the first little while, everyone talks about the next projects that they have on the horizon. And then we take a tour of the facility where each of us as a manager writes down everything that they think that they should be fixed. And then we come back. So one person hosts, right? So the host brings all these people in. Now you've got 10, 15, 20 experts, peers, mind you, they're, just as smart as you are. But the key thing is none of us is as smart as all of us. Yes. So when you've got 15, 20 people walking around your building, pointing holes in the stuff that you were proud of and you wanted to show off, okay, that hurts a little bit, right?
Because in a way, shut that ego up. It's hard. Yeah.
It's hard, man. No one wants to look like an idiot in front of your peers or people that you respect, right? But at the same time, man, where else are you going to get this opportunity to get expert feedback from so many people who are smart in the ways you've got 15 different energy managers working for you for that brief half an hour? How will you maximize that? And that's the big question.
Well, and so then, I want to hop in for a second just with one of your comments, which was when you're in these groups and you ask a question. Well, there was two comments you said. So one, come in like you're role playing as an apprentice. So ask a question carefully. And we insist on a lot of details in the groups because we don't want to have to ask you 20 questions to figure out what the heck you're talking about. But come in as an apprentice. And then the other thing I thought that you said that was really interesting was soak up the comments. Don't respond. So where did that come from?
Yeah, this comes from long hours of experience. So, when this community of practice stuff started, and there's been examples of this, I've done this in a couple of different settings, is people come at it from a hobbyist perspective. So if you're a hobbyist woodworker, right? You've made this like beautiful, you use the lathe to carve this beautiful elephant, let's say. I'm going to show you something that, you've carved something beautiful like this.
Oh, wow.
If you're a
That is beautiful.
hobbyist group meeting with other hobbyists, you want to show off,
Mhm.
and you want people to say, "Oh my God, that's brilliant and amazing. How can I learn from you?" But that's not the point of community of practice. You're not at a conference. You're not showing off. What you're doing is you're laying yourself bare so that people can help you get better at what you're doing. And I know it's hard, and I know it comes from a place of vulnerability, blah blah blah. But then never again, at least in our setting, for a month, you only get this opportunity once a month. And in fact, when you do this on a rolling basis, you only get to host them like once a year, right? Once a year, you've got the attention of 15, 20 people who are just as smart as you are, put together, smarter than you can ever possibly be, dedicated towards helping you improve your craft. Now, what is the best mental model? What is the best frame of mind to approach that situation, right? You can't go in there, because let's say you only had half an hour. You
Mhm.
have half an hour to not only to expose your problem, but to let them expose the problem for you. So my frame of mind going into these things is that I'm a blank sheet of paper, baby. I know fuck all. I know nothing. So here's where my head is at, boys and girls. What do you see? What are you seeing that I'm not seeing? Right?
Yeah.
What am I missing? Like help me, like help. It's like and I think if you bring that same approach to the HVAC 2.0, and I know that because of the Facebook forum aspect of it, it feels like there's no urgency or time sensitivity. But if you approach it with saying, okay, I am going into this HVAC 2.0, it's an institution.
Mhm.
And I'm going into that institution because I want it to shape me and mold me and help me get better.
Yeah.
I have the attention of how many of our members, 100, 150, 25, whatever the number of members are. I have their attention for the next 30 minutes. These are the best techs in business.
They are.
Some of them are better than I am. Some of them are probably just as good as I am, but put together, they are probably see things in ways that I don't do. How do I maximize this opportunity to get better at what I'm doing?
Mhm.
And I think that's the frame of mind that I think you have to put yourself intentionally in as you go in, because otherwise, everything else that we're used to, right? Because we are good at what we do and we are skilled technicians, we take
Mhm.
pride in our work. We
Yep.
go in as hobbyists because this is part science, part art, part craft, just like something like this is. But then if you go in because you're used to going to conferences and showing off, then you will never learn anything. So where I was with that is that I thought if I feel like I think I've done this before, but when I'm posting a question, I remember I did post a question way back when. Um, I I went in, with just uh, my frame of mind was like I'm an apprentice, and I'm in presence of all these masters, not masters of craft, but like a sort of a master relationship, right? When you're an apprentice, you're learning from someone who's
Mhm.
been in the biz for so long. Because if you aggregate, you got 10 guys in there with 5 years experience. You've got, 50, in a way, a manner of speaking, 50 years of combined experience. I'm going into a room with 50 years of experience. So
Mhm.
you go in there, put yourself in the frame of an apprentice. You role play. You don't have to sell yourself short. You don't have to fake modesty, but it's putting yourself in the frame of mind of, as an apprentice, I want to learn so I can get better at my craft, so I can get the fuck out of here and start my own business. So if you go in there, right?
Yeah.
So
No,
you
that's
go in there
exactly
with
it.
that,
Um,
yeah,
I'm chuckling. So there's this product right here that from the Monday
yeah,
meeting last week, I had a water quality
yeah,
problem. So I'm struggling with some
right,
issues with my water heater right now. And So guys, I have this, and there's 15 people on the call, and 4 of them were like, "Yep, that's the product you want. Go buy one. It's running right now." Because I was the apprentice. Like, guys, I've got this problem. I don't know what the hell to do. Tell me. And they did. Now to see if it works. But yeah, the communities of practice are huge. So one other thing that keeps coming up in my mind, there's a wonderful book called Story Brand, and it talks about like whenever we are with a client, we are not the heroes, we are the guides. Which is a lot of what it's very analogous to what you're talking about in the apprentice versus the master or the journeyman. So like we shouldn't be there. Here I am to save the day. We should be there. All right, so you could do this or you could do this. I've been in that situation before and I did this and it worked. I did this and it was a horrible mess up. And the experience share of that and putting yourself in the position of a guide rather than being the hero, which to some extent, I guess you could also look at it as like ego and super ego to some degree too. I want to be the super ego where I'm being more erudite and thoughtful, and I'm not going to take things personally. I'm just putting it out there. Take it for what you will, rather than letting our egos rule, which is incredibly hard. I definitely have an ego. I get it poked, I get it stroked, and I have to constantly try to be aware of it. And I might be slightly better than I was in the past, but it's hard. It's just hard. So anyway, but the hero versus guide is a really important thing that keeps coming up. And whenever you feel yourself being the hero, shut up.
Right. And I also keep thinking, like, would you go into Dragon's Den, or I guess you guys have Shark Tank in the United States. We have Dragon's Den here in Canada. Would you go into Shark Tank with this attitude, right? Like, would you go to Mark Cuban and start arguing with him when he gives you evaluation? We've all seen episodes where people do that, and we all cringe, right, when we watch that. And the reason for that is because not only are you pissing people off, which is whatever, right, but you've also lost an opportunity to learn more about how you could, think about your business, restructure your business, and that kind of thing. And so I think that because I think in part in this sort of community of peers, we all see ourselves as a Mark Cuban. It's difficult to go into the room and then act like, and then take that away. But then if you just, again, all of this is meant, who you are, as you can be Mark Cuban outside the room, but when you're in there in that room, if you just put yourself in the mental framework of, I'm in the fucking Shark's Den, Teddy's going to yell at me. If I don't ask a very specific question, just do your homework, right? Do your homework. Go in there, go into the Shark's Den, and then you will come out of it with a more rewarding experience, both emotionally and also productively from your business point.
I like that. So it's a lot of that is make it as easy as possible for this community of practice to help you. Yes,
exactly.
So that's part of it. So that's an interesting distillation that I hadn't quite put together until right then. As dumb as that may sound, that sounds simple, but
no, imagine, I mean, here's another analogy, right? Maybe I'm overextending myself with these analogies, but like, let's say you ran out of ideas for rearranging your home and decorating it. And you decided to get input from your friends, some of whom have houses that you kind of like. And then, instead of inviting them to your place, let's say you did invite them to your place. And one of them says, hey, why don't you put your couch under the next to the window? And if you started saying, what the fuck are you talking about, man? Don't talk to me like I'm stupid. I wouldn't put the couch next to the window. Like, who are you helping?
That's not helpful. You asked for help. Yeah.
None of us would do that. Imagine you ask people come over to your place to help you move a couch, and if they said, "Hey, let's get the cushions off the couch first," and feel like, "Fuck this!
Yeah.
I don't want your stupid suggestion." See, none of us would behave like that in other social circumstances, right? Because we know that we are at the mercy of our friends who are helping us. We know that we are soliciting valuable input. So I think that because this gets tied in with our skills and our trade, and because a lot of us put our minds and hearts into our business, it's very difficult for us to separate feedback from a criticism of you as a person or an individual or personality. And a lot of it also comes from the fact that we've sunk in, all of us, I think, have sunk in not just our hearts, but our money. And then we've taken risks to be in this business.
Yeah.
And so when someone criticizes it, I think I'm reflecting on my own thing. I get defensive sometimes about some of the stuff that people say.
Me too.
It's a knee-jerk reaction because not only is it in my head, it makes me deep down, there's a monkey part of my brain that makes me question, and am I even doing the right thing? Is this even the job for me? Am I messing up? Like, and this is in the back of my mind, right? But in the front of my mind, how it comes out through my mouth is to be defensive and to be like, oh, this is annoying, and or to just get stuck in my. So to unravel those deep insecurities, I think, and is to intentionally put yourself in the frame of mind of saying, I'm going into Shark Tank. I want to get the best advice I can get of all these assholes that I hate. That's fine if that's how you feel. Right? It's okay, man. There's no hard feelings.
But there's
right?
always
Okay.
something to learn. Everyone has something to teach.
Yeah. Yeah. So yeah, I mean, Mark Cuban is an asshole, but boy, I gotta get as much wisdom as I can from him because this is my best shot at learning something new. And I think that frame of mind, it's and you only need to, that's why I call it role playing, because you don't need to adapt it as a philosophy because it's hard. You just need to role play.
Yeah.
In that room,
I am an actor at this moment, and this is my character. And as soon as I post this, I go back to being me again.
Yep. I go back to my shop. I have a couple of techs working for me. I can be the boss, man.
Yeah.
Perfectly fine. You've earned it, buddy.
Yeah, exactly. So, oh shoot, I had a thought on how to put this, but the communities of practice. I know what it was. I remember you mentioning a little while ago. You said one of the unique pieces of the communities of practice is that you have other people you can drop in. So normally you do this sort of thing in person. Where you're an auto mechanic and it's your day off and you go drop in at your buddy's shop and what are you working on? Oh, I haven't seen that. Have you seen this? And I did this, and this was a little shortcut. And that's where jumps get made. But in these groups, what makes them really cool and unique is now you can be anywhere in the world, anywhere in the country, and you can get help from people and learn. And so I view this as a way that we can move the industry and potentially move society forward very, very quickly in a helpful way. Because at the end of the day, most technical people in general. Like in the HVAC world, you've got your business people and you have your techs. Most companies are started by a tech who got frustrated working for somebody and went out on his own. So fundamentally, he is still a technician, but now he's a business owner as well. But there's still that technician mindset. And where I find like all my friends here, they jones on pulling up to a house, figuring out what's wrong, changing the part, fixing the problem, getting a check, and going away with it fixed. That's where they get their worth in a lot of ways. And I get it because I'm capable to some of that stuff, but I'm just okay technically. I'm more of a big picture thinker than I am a technician. It also doesn't. It sucks. My dad was a mechanical savant, so it's like being Michael Jordan's son and just moderately talented. You're going to feel like an asshole So I sure did, which is kind of a bummer because he was a
Sorry,
bad teacher.
my dad.
What's
Right.
that?
I mean, my dad is an Indian doctor, right? So imagine the shadow I lived under. So I get it.
Yeah. So it can be challenging, but my point is, if we can give this wonderful group a path forward to do the good work, enjoy what they're doing, and actually make more money at it, while decarbonizing things and
Right.
making consumer lives better.
Right.
It's like, so where's the drawback? The drawback is more money is spent. So we have to figure out how to provide value and then make sure we're not hurting people. Um,
Right.
but it's, the whole communities of practice thing. I love the idea of I just dropped in and I learned something and I'm going to apply that tomorrow on a job I'm going to do.
Right. I was talking to Ted about this, but in India, I grew up in southern India, and we have a word in Tamil. It's called kutti sevru. It literally means small boundary wall. So in houses in southern India, outside the property, they have a small wall, just like
Mm-hmm.
some places here. Some people have gates, right? Some houses have a wall.
Yeah.
They're usually short, and you can perch on them. You can sit on them. So usually young kids,
Yeah.
you sit on a kutti sevre next to a bus stop where you know that one of your friends would get off the bus on his way home, or
Mm-hmm.
on the way to go to the store or something. So it's a place where you perch, and you wait for the evening to unroll in front of you, right? It's not purpose driven.
Yeah.
You don't go to the kutti sevre. It's not like you go to the bar to hang out, but you're just there, and people drop in, and you talk and you exchange, and so on. So you take that concept to the communities of practice. The thing about communities of practice is that, like, it's essentially, I don't want to get too philosophical here, but it's the question of, like, how is knowledge managed? So if you look at something like ASHRAE or all these, like, industrial organizations or industrial knowledge managers, so for them, knowledge is maintained and reinforced through credentials and standards. So you've got the ASHRAE 5.0, 2.0, technician license, this, that. You got coursework, course modules, training, upskilling, blah, blah, blah. Whereas a community of practice, it's that the idea is that knowledge and practice are integrated. And knowledge is not held in any one repository, but knowledge is held through the shared practices of this group.
Yeah.
And so in HVAC 2.0, the knowledge is held by membership. So the value that community of practice offers is not here's a repository of resources, not that alone, but you're getting access to the community, the culture, and the language, right? So you get to behave like a HVAC contractor. Where do you go to learn how to behave like a technician, right? You learn what the language is, and you know what the culture is. See, these things are impossible to learn through any non-social means.
Yep.
So you've got a culture of being an HVAC technician that you're tapping into. So you can adopt that culture. You can let that institution shape you, rather than go in there being like, I know what to do. I just need three modules of training, and then I will electrify Baltimore, right? That's not, buddy. That's not how it's going to work.
Right? Yeah, it's we all need something to lean on. It's funny too. So the reactions you get are oftentimes very binary. So my good friend Chris Fobb, he enjoys being a troll, but he's also a phenomenally helpful person. And I have to say that's kind of a consistent thing, really. So what was it he put it the other day? He's like, so if you come in cocky, I will take you apart piece by piece and will enjoy it. But if you come in looking to learn, I will kill you with kindness. I will answer everything you have. And he's like, there is no in between. So that is one of the kind of unique rules of a blue collar community of practice. I mean, we make fun of each other incessantly. I mean, you watch it. I mean, what is I wrote it down. I was chatting with Ted right before this, and I said warm and fierce. So there's both. There's I love you, and then but you're being a complete moron. Stop it. And just like, but you don't put it that way. It's you usually start insulting mother's honor or something like that. Like it's pretty fierce. But you don't wonder where you stand. And the culture generally leans itself towards self-improvement and not having too much in the way of yes men.
Right.
Because I thought that was, how did you put it about like corporate culture? Like people try to bend themselves to fit the culture or something like that? Well,
yeah. So I think, it in the sense that like there's a lot of coddling that goes on in some corporate environments. It's because you begin, I think sometimes you begin with like all perspectives are valid. Therefore, the way you do your thing. Actually, this might sound a little off track, but you hear me out. So I'm an immigrant, right? I moved from India to Michigan 10 years ago, went to grad school and worked there, and I moved here 4 years ago. In rural Michigan, my blue collar buddies had no problem whatsoever coming up to me and saying, Abhi, let me show you the American way. I'm going to take you fishing. I'm going to take you hunting. I'm going to take you. We'll make an American out of you someday, right? Said in jest.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And so there's tacit things about a culture that you don't learn unless you involve yourself in it.
Yeah.
I tried going fishing by myself the first time I moved there because I wanted to blend in with the locals. So I bought a fishing rod at Walmart. I didn't even have a license. I didn't know you needed a license. Don't tell DNR that. But I went to a dock and I tried fishing. It was boring as all heck, man. I was like, who does this thing?
This is stupid.
So that's explicit knowledge of fishing. Mm-hmm. But the tacit knowledge of fishing is that fishing is incidental to whatever it is that you're doing with your buddies. It's an activity that goes along. You're out with your buddies and you're having a good time. Fishing is something that you do. Whereas what actually happens is nurturing friendships, and that's my tacit knowledge. It's not rendered explicit. No one ever told me that. I could never have learned it other than involving myself in the culture. When I moved here to Canada, because I live in an urban environment, most of my social network is white collar. Mm-hmm. People are happy. Canada is a welcoming country for immigrants, whatever, blah blah blah. They welcome you. And welcome you to be the way you are, but that comes with social isolation because not many people have come to me and said, Abhi, let me show you the Canadian way. So in some ways, when I initially moved here, I felt a little left out from the Canadian way of life because I went out and bought this flannel, just so I could feel more Canadian.
Right clothes, yeah.
I would have liked to, and I'm a very outgoing social person, so I put myself in these situations, but if this was like an analogy would be, Abhi, let me take you out curling, or Abhi, let me take you out to an ice hockey game, and we'll make a Canadian out of you. Is a perspective that is frowned upon in some ways because like we want immigrants to bring their values with them, which I think is fine, but it comes with a aspect where sometimes you feel like you don't belong and you're not benefiting from the culture that this country offers. Because I don't know how I would ever go ice fishing. I don't know how I'd ever go curling. I wouldn't even know where to begin.
Yeah. No, that's a really interesting perspective because it makes me think back to a client of mine. When I worked for my dad, we had a German client who bought our creepers, and being told something harsh, but that has love behind it, which is kind of what. So your blue collar friends, that's what it is. Like, oh, look at you, you're kind of an idiot. Let me help you with that. Like, I'm gonna take that away, and I'm gonna show you how to do this, and we're gonna have a good time, and then you'll know. So this German client of mine, And I was 21 when I went over there, and Guy was 50. So big age gap, but we still enjoy each other. I still talk to him periodically, and he takes me out to dinner. And he watches me eating the American way, where I cut something and then I put my knife down, switch hands, and then eat. And he looks at me and he's like, Nate, there are two kinds of people in this world that eat that way: Americans and barbarians. Like he just like he hung on to barbarians hard, but I knew that he loved me and I loved him, so I took that feedback with the spirit that he meant. And for the rest of my trip there, I never put my my knife down. I ate just like the Europeans do, and now I'm back to the American way. But that was, I guess, in some ways, to use the blue collar, white collar. It's not totally perfect, but it's not that far off. So he gave me blue collar feedback in what he did there, where the white collar feedback would be, well, I'm going to call HR, and then HR is going to call me and bring me in, and it's going to be awkward.
Right.
And so I think
or to be like, like this is how Americans are, so we'll just accept them as they are. Right? Americans are barbarians, let them eat the way they are. But so yeah, in a way, then you'll never, like, I have felt more a more sense. It was easier for me to develop a sense of belonging in Michigan than it was. I had to be more intentional about it here. I had to put myself in situations like that here. Whereas there it was relatively more easy. So the way that I would bring this back to our discussion is that HVAC 2.0, I see that as the equivalent of like my rural Michigan experience, where you would go in and people would give you tough love. I remember when I first moved there, I call her my Finnish grandma. She's not my grandma, but she's not even, she's many generations ago from Finland. But she reamed me out for like not having the right clothing. She said, buddy, like there's no bad weather, just bad clothing. So don't be an idiot, right? Don't, just you stop.
Great Scandinavian saying. I love that saying.
Oh, buddy, yeah. So I'm like, much respect, I listen to you, wise mother, and and anyway, so yeah. So I think that if people brought that same attitude, not just in terms of asking questions, but also when in HVAC 2.0, when people help. When you enter into that into the discussion as a master, I remember when I first started, in a job I used to have way ago, my boss told me, think of this as like a forest, right? This beautiful, magical forest. And I've been in this forest for 40, 50 years. And there's two things I can do. One, I can hold your hand and drag you around with me wherever I go. Or I could tell you, here's where the cool stuff is, there's where the cool stuff is, and let you go exploring. Which would you have more fun with and which would you learn more from, right? And so if you enter into this as a, hey man, I've been in this magic forest for 6 years. Here is what I have done in my time as a master. So when you're providing feedback, you enter into as a master, saying, I've been here for 10 years, and this is what I have done in the past. And then when you're entering it, asking a question, you go in as an apprentice saying, I'm in this magical forest. How would you do it if you were in my position? I think that would just give each other, because our only product is shared knowledge, right? Like that's the currency that we have on HVAC 2.0.
That's humanity in general, frankly.
Yeah, it's not like we're sitting on this like repository and we're selling people become a member. Yes, in a way, right? Because I guess what I mean is you're not paying for access to this paper I wrote about how awesome my project was, right? What you're sharing is access to the culture and access to that shared knowledge. And so if you're paying, if not financially, if you're paying to be a part of this, then the currency that you would use is how do you tap into the biggest resource on the planet? I honestly think HVAC 2.0 Facebook forums are the biggest resource for electrification on the planet. I read, policy documents before I go to bed, and all that sort of shit, man. But I'm telling you, on hand to heart, I learn more about the realities and the challenges of electrification from HVAC 2.0 forums. I would I hope someone from Biden's team is watching these forums, because these insights, the knowledge that is being generated there is so valuable. I hope people appreciate what they're getting, because you can't pay. I'll tell you this from an urban policy developer's perspective. Cities struggle to scaling up their ambition on retrofits because they don't have a system like this through which, without government incentives, without mandating courses and training and stuff like that, HVAC installers and homeowners upskill both their ambition and their trades. You have a package system through which people are upgrading not just their skills, but also their ambition and the scale of projects that they can take on and the finesse at which they can take on and complete projects. That package is extremely valuable. And I'm telling this to you on record. I'll give you 5 years and 10 years from now, HVAC 2.0 as a commodity will be hot in policy circles, because everyone is out there is looking for an entity like this that can quickly take people in, give them a sense of belonging, help them improve their craft, and help them contribute meaningfully to what we're all trying to do.
It's very kind
People
of you.
who are part of this.
Thank you, Abhi. Like, really, that's very kind. It's been a long time trying to figure this out. That's for sure.
Man, you and Ted and a host of other folks have done a lot of heavy lifting. Like, I've just been a fly on the wall on this stuff. And like I've told Ted this before. Like, man, I want to get it on the ground floor. Like, how do I don't know, where do I sign up? Like, you want a pint of my blood? Like, what's going on?
We tell you the same thing we tell everybody, Abhi, which is find a spot that you fit in and take it. Here's the bus. Go find your seat. And if you want to switch seats, that's okay too.
Yeah, even though once in a while you might get thrown under the bus by Ted, but that's okay.
Oh yeah, that's part of it. Talking about tough love.
Yes,
that's usually what's going on. So someday I will create a Ted Kid Award for someone that just goes out there and just stirs crap up and plays bad cop and is just incredibly harsh because it's not easy. It's a really bad position, but it's a necessary position to move quickly. So it takes a very specific person to be able to do it. So I'm thankful that he does that. But someday there'll be that.
Everyone needs a Ted in their life to call them out on their shit. I swear. Like,
yeah. We often talk about Elon Musk and think, man, he needs a Ted. Because I don't know that he has a whole lot of people to really bounce stuff off of at a very deep level.
He needs the Ted, not just a Ted, actually.
Well, he may that may work out. We'll see. If anybody's going to acquire us, I think it's going to be Tesla. So, anyway, thank you for being game for doing this, because this was totally impromptu. I think this is going to go on the HVAC 2.0 channel, because that I swear on. And Nate, the House Whisperer, is meant to be more nice Nate than Warrior Nate. But it's a character I've always enjoyed is King David, because he was a broken person who had all kinds of issues, but he was a hell of a warrior. He was an artist. He was a thinker. He was a good father, and I'm sure a bad father too at times. But I like looking at that kind of character and seeing the complexity that one person can be. So, I mean, wherever you stand on the reality of that, it's a good story, and you get to see a lot of different facets of humanity. So it's important, I think, that we all recognize that we have these different facets, and we use them when it's advantageous either to ourselves or to moving things forward.
See, you are excellent at role playing, right? Because you just talked about like your Nate channel and the HY 2.0 channel, and then on Twitter, when you're speaking to a different audience, you're a different person. When we talk on HY 2.0 forums, you're a different person. And I think over time you've mastered that. And it's not. I can see a world in which people look at that almost like a negative trait, like, oh, who's the real Nate Adams? Please stand up. But man, you gotta know your audience. You gotta be able to present your ask and your question and your answer in a way that you're easily understood, because time is our most valuable resource, and you got to get the most out of every world that you inhabit, just as well as you're able to contribute the most to every world you inhabit. So you're very good at that, Nate. I've told you this many, many times before, and there's very few people who can span those boundaries really effectively. So I wish you more success in being able to do that, because I mean, honestly, if we are to decarbonize, we need more people like you.
Well, thank you. And perhaps I could suggest on Energy Twitter, we get better at being playful with each other, even if it's fiercely playful, because I enjoy it immensely. I much prefer the 2.0 forum in many ways to Twitter. Because it's not, how's this person going to see this and perceive this, and are they going to be upset, and then what am I going to do about that? It's like, no, here it is, and if somebody has a problem with it, I get a message and we figure it out. I like that side of things. So if I could ask Energy Twitter to allow a little more blue collar in there, let's mix it up a little bit and have some fun. And know that we love each other and are all pulling in the same direction.